Did you hear that?
Yep. Oh, let me push.
Okay.
Okay.
The floor is yours and identify however you want.
My name is Adam Gunton, and I am a recovered drug addict and alcoholic. And it was September 28th, 2008. I've been out drinking and partying like most nights my freshman year of college when I woke up to my phone ringing and vibrating down by my leg. I swam through the soft sheets to find my hard phone with the bright screen that read 4:47 a.m. and my best friend Chucker was calling me. And I remember having the conscious choice that I could either answer the phone like I always do with, "Hey, what's up, Chuck?" Or I could answer the way I was feeling with, hello? And in my still drunken state, I chose the latter, to which a soft voice replied, "Hey, what's up? Why are you calling me this late? I was just calling to say hi. Don't call me this late again." And I hung up on him, and he shot himself. And for nearly a decade, I was unable to share that phone call with anyone, as I bottled it down deeper and deeper with drugs and alcohol. Drugs and alcohol were no longer a way to party and have fun. Drugs and alcohol had become my solution to life, which led me to finding myself homeless, 86 from the homeless shelter, so I was super homeless. And I was unable to stop using the very drugs and alcohol that were taking everything from me. And my life didn't start like this. I was like a golden American boy, grew up in Littleton, Colorado. Everybody's heard of my high school, Columbine High School. And even in Little League, I was, part of a football team. We won state every single year. My baseball team, we won state. And my last season on that baseball team, we were at the state championship tournament, and it was the semifinals. We were playing the team that was supposed to win state, and I was playing third base. And it was the last inning, so it was the bottom of the sixth inning. So in Little League, you only had 6 innings. I was on third base, and we were up by 1 run. The bases were loaded, and there were 0 outs. And their 4-hole hitter came up, and everyone was thinking, there's no way we're going to make it out of this thing. And the first pitch, this batter cracks it right down the third baseline. I catch it. I touch third base. Everybody in the crowd is yelling, "Throw it to first, throw it to first." And I threw it over to second to my boy Justin. And it was a triple play. We won the game, and we went on to win state, and we went to the World Series that year. And at the World Series, I was the home run derby hitter. And, if I could have, ended life right there, I would have had nothing but great memories. I would have had, nothing but great experiences. Um, but even during that time, I had already started down the path of drugs and alcohol. I didn't even recognize that this is what was happening in my life. I didn't recognize that drugs and alcohol were that bad. I feel like there was a missing component at that period of my life that I can't blame anybody for, and I don't blame anybody for, but I didn't have that conversation had with me about where drugs and alcohol actually lead. I remember having the DARE program coming into my fourth grade class and putting the drunk goggles on me in front of the whole class. And I'm like, whoa, and everybody around me's laughing. So I learned this gets me attention. This makes people like me. So during high school, I was the captain of our defense for Columbine High School. My senior year, we won state. And during this time, I was a huge part of the problem because I was I was friends with everybody and, Mr. Popular and that kind of stuff. I took 3 Broncos cheerleaders to my senior year homecoming. And that whole time, I was actually selling drugs also. I had this hidden, deep, dark secret that none of the adults could know, but I was the guy that was getting people fake IDs to get alcohol and selling cocaine and selling ecstasy in high school because I thought that this was what got me attention. I thought that this is what made people like me. And after that thing with Chuck happened, that was the first time that I consciously began using drugs and alcohol to cope with the way that I felt, to cope with my life, and started to mask all of the things that were going on with drugs and alcohol. And it didn't become, it wasn't partying anymore. It became more of who I am. It was I woke up and I thought about what I was going to use. It was I'm going out to have fun, so I need to drink. I'm really sad, so I need to use opiates. And it got to a place where later on that year, with that year that Chuck committed suicide, I found Oxycontin when I was prescribed 250 milligrams a day by a doctor because of a back injury I had in my football career. And we all know the story of running out of that prescription, and the next best thing was heroin. And heroin, I don't have horrible things to say about heroin except for it ruined my life, everything around me, except everything inside of me was solved with that thing. I could actually live as long as I had heroin to put in my arm. And I remember time after time after time, I would throw my dope in the toilet at night, right before I go to bed, saying, I'm never going to use again. I'm done. I promise all of this. And I'm saying this to myself. And then I wake up in the morning and I pawn my TV to go get more dope. That was my life on drugs. I couldn't stop. I constantly wanted to. Alcohol was always there. But what I found about this disease, because I believe I have alcoholism. And because early on in my drinking career, I would black out like that, and bad things would happen like that. I would wake up in the Denver Health Detox Center in what's called the quiet room, where if you're out of control, they just lock you in a room until you detox. I would wake up in there not knowing how I got there. But even though I knew all of that was happening with alcohol, I had to find the solution to the way that I felt without getting all of these consequences. So my disease manifested in using whatever I could get my hands on. I was a more addict. And if you haven't heard about more, it's what you got, and then when it's done, where can we get some more? That was my life on drugs and alcohol. And this whole time, I'm also, have this really great facade on the outside. Just like my high school career, where I was the captain of the football team, captain of the wrestling team, with this hidden secret of bringing people with me into the darkness. During this time, I started my first business in 2011. It was a pest control company here in Colorado, and I sold 967 accounts door to door in 1 year, our first year. I'd never done sales before. And that was like the most anybody had ever heard of. And that whole time, I had a needle in my arm. Now, what is it about this disease that makes it so that we're able to do whatever it takes to get it? Because you've heard that the motivational speakers say you gotta have that strong why. You gotta know why you're doing it, and you'll motivate yourself to go do it. Well, my why was heroin, so I was really able to go out and make a lot of sales. But it always ended with me alone in some raggedy place wanting to die. I remember having this company that we went from a truck and a dream, me and my best friend at the time, out of his apartment. And 8 months later, we have a 2-story office building and 6 employees and trucks and everything. And I'm going home after work to this raggedy apartment because every dollar I was making was going into my arm. And one time I even had this iPad and I wrote this sorry suicide note on it. And again, this whole time, I still haven't told anybody about Chuck's suicide. I still hadn't told anybody that it was my fault. I was the one that did it, because that was the internal belief that I had, was that he did it because I didn't show up. It was my fault. I couldn't tell anybody. So I had this idea that I needed to do that too. And I wrote this horrible suicide note. It was like 2 sentences that, I'm super sorry, Mom. And, that kind of, it's sad to even think about. And then I loaded up as much as I could in a syringe and I put it in my arm, and I thought I was gone, but then I woke up the next day with the needle still in my arm, halfway off the couch. My arm was completely dead because I went out on it. And my first thought, the first thing I did was I looked up and I screamed at God, why? Why am I still here? And that was early. That was early. That was 5 years before I got sober. I was suffering like that. I wanted to stop like that. I wanted to die like that, and I couldn't stop. The first 12-step meeting I ever went to, I was 20 years old, 8 years before I got sober, and I was going to meetings the whole time, on and off. I was going into the meetings, I was searching for God. I found Jesus when I was 10 years old, real randomly with a friend who had a sleepover at my place. I didn't grow up in a religious household, and I gave my life to Jesus there. And what I found about that kind of relationship is that, with any God that you serve, he's always there. We're the ones that walk away. And I found that no matter what God you serve, no matter what higher power you believe in, they all need us to make the right decisions and take the right actions in order for their power to be used. Doesn't matter who your God is. So I'm walking away from him like crazy this whole time, but this weird thing in my heart, I always knew he was there. But during my addiction, I hated myself so much that it made it impossible for me to allow God to love me. And this one time, after I leave that pest control company, I'm still able to do door-to-door sales like crazy. I was able to sell DirecTV and Dish Network. I literally just found a couple days ago, found this award that I got for selling like 450 accounts in a year for one satellite place. I was the number one salesman. And then that same year, I was the number one salesman for another satellite company that was door to door. So I was always able to just do something, but I always had that strong why of heroin. So I'm going door to door, and they'll give me like a corporate house. They'll pay for my car and my insurance. And like literally I have no bills because as long as I sell, as long as I perform, as long as I look good to everybody and make everybody around me happy, I can get heroin, I can live. And I had this corporate house. This is in 2016. And, I'm skipping a whole bunch of mess from, when that happened in 2008 to when this happened in 2016. But I'm in this corporate house, and I was alone, and I was sitting at my desk, and I had this desk in my room with this drawer that I kept all my stuff in, my syringes and my dope and all that kind of stuff. And I'm sitting there, and I'm looking at this loaded syringe, and I didn't want to use it. And internally, I was really contemplating this because I'm looking at it and I don't want to do it, but everything inside of me is saying that I have to. And I start crying. And I remember the way that the syringe was magnified through the tears in my eyes, this blurry, big thing in my hand that was taking everything from me. And I didn't want to use it, but I had to. And I set it down on the desk, and I put my face in my hands, and I was crying. And I heard this voice from behind me say, pray. And I looked behind me, and there was no one there. And I put my face back in my hands, and I'm crying harder and harder because I just hate myself so much. And I heard that voice again say, pray. And I got up from that chair, and I started walking over to my bed, and I was limping, and not from physical pain, but from the emotional pain that was going on from this deep, dark addiction and hatred for myself. And I dropped down on my knees next to my bed, and I put my hands up, and all I could get out was, God. In that moment, I felt arms wrap up from behind me and hug me, as if to say, I love you in this moment. In your lowest, I love you. And these weren't arms that were reaching down from above me or patting me on the shoulder like everybody else did, like, it's going to be okay, buddy. These were arms of somebody that was down on the ground with me in my lowest moment, telling me I love you the same today as I did when you were 10, as I ever will, and you can never perform enough to earn it. It's yours for free. And I got up from, all I said was God. And then I got that hug. And it was as if I, I felt okay like that. And I got up and I walked over to that desk and I shot up. And it got even darker from there. I ended up losing that job. I left that job because I was watching myself just kill myself over and over and over. And I ended up homeless in Billings, Montana. I was on probation. I was going into my probation officer asking him to put me in prison because I can't stop using. And I'm on this list for treatment. I'm going to 12-step meetings every day. I'm going to Bible study every Tuesday. I'm going to church every Saturday and Sunday. I even went to the local MMA gym thinking they might be able to beat recovery into me, and nothing was working. And I didn't know what to do. I couldn't stop. And this one day on November 6th of 2017, I was sitting in my car. It wasn't my car. It was actually a car that a girl let me borrow that wasn't stolen, but I had to start it with a screwdriver. I don't know why. We don't have to live like that anymore. But it's before Bible study on a Tuesday, and I'm sitting in this car, and I had this epiphany that I've literally tried everything within my power to stop, and I can't. I'm at the end of my road. I've been 86 from the homeless shelter. I don't even have a phone that my family can get a hold of me on because I threw it out the window one day because I didn't want them to watch me die. And I sit back in that chair, in that seat in that car, and I said, I'm done. I'm not going to these meetings. I'm not going to Bible study. I'm not going to church. I'm not going to probation. Please let me die. And I was saying this audibly to God, and I meant it so deeply in my heart. And I heard this whisper in my heart. And it's really, when you hear this whisper. And he said, it's time, go. And you would think that when you hear that, you would get excited, like, oh my gosh, it's time, let's go. But immediately for me, I felt anger. Like, what's different about this time, God? What's different about this time than all the times that I dumped all my dope in the toilet and said I was never going to use again? It's time right now. And then I wake up in the morning and I pawn my TV. What's different about this time? So I'm screaming and I'm hitting the roof of my car and I'm crying and I'm hitting the steering wheel and yelling at God. And I'm doing this for like minute, 2 minutes. And then I start to like slow down my breathing. And then I just hear the exact same voice just repeat itself. It's time, go. And in that moment, I didn't have this overwhelming sense of Holy Spirit power. It's over, it's finished. But I had this sense of willingness that I'd never had before, this sense of surrender that I'd never had before. And I know that those two words are used a lot within the recovery community, but when you truly experience what it's like to let go of control of your own power trying to stop this thing, and I will just do whatever you say, God, you experience it. I went to that Bible study. I bust the doors open. I'm like 15 minutes late. They're all in the middle of prayer. And I interrupt them. I drop down on my knees and I throw my hands up and I say, guys, I can't stop. Please help me. Please help me. And I'm crying. You have to imagine this homeless, haven't showered in a week, dirty, tweaker, junkie, throwing his hands up to this fellowship, screaming for help. But I remember I wasn't throwing my hands up to that fellowship. And I wasn't throwing my hands up to a church or a pastor or a big book or any 12-step group. I was throwing my hands up in surrender to God for the first time in my life with everything inside of me. And my best friend, Brendan, who led the Bible study, comes over, like, heard this for months. And he's like, hey, bro, let's just get through the Bible study. And he walks me over and, we get through it. And then at the end of Bible study, one of the elders, one of the older guys there comes over to me. He's like, hey, man, I got a word. I got for you. And for the first time in my life, for whatever reason, I've been going to church in multiple different states. I've been going to Bible study, been around a lot of Christians. For the first time in my life, a man put hands on me and prayed for me, telling different things to get out of me. And while he's doing that, Brendan and George are standing behind me, and I'm feeling things coming out of me. I'm feeling my shoulders get lighter. I'm feeling my body get freed of something. and leave there. 5 days later, I'm sitting at IHOP, International House of Pancakes, with Brendan. He would pick me up from the streets and take me to get breakfast or coffee or lunch or to Bible study, to church, whatever. Just somebody that was walking with me in the lowest. And we all need that. Um, and we're sitting there at IHOP and I'm all excited because I have 5. Dude, can't believe it. I'm going to make it this time. And then I get this text message on my phone and I open it up because I just had this little flip phone and it was from my dope. He's like, hey, bro, I just got some free stuff. Or I just got some new stuff. It's fire. I'll give you a free 20 to try out. And I was like, and when I read it, I felt something go through my body, in through my head. My toes were tingling, my fingers were tingling. I lost my peripheral vision. All I could see was my phone. And then my thumb, it was in like King James. It was like, ye shall not again, hast texted me for the last time. And then at the end of the text, I feel that thing leave me. I was like, what the heck? And while I'm writing it, I can't even read it. And I'm like looking at it and reading. I was like, dude. I show it to Brendan. I was like, dude, that wasn't me. That wasn't me. He was like, okay. I push send, I close it, and I'm putting it in my pocket. I was like, dude, I don't know what that was. And I look back up, and Jesus is sitting across from me. The entire restaurant had completely disappeared. Went glow on me from behind him. He was smiling at me, and we're talking in less than a second. I immediately knew who it was, immediately knew it was happening. And the only thing that I can compare to that moment was when I used to shoot up heroin. Like all those negative thoughts, all the self-hatred, all the doubt, all the fear, all that chucked suicide, all that stuff inside of my head just floods out of me. But the difference in this moment is that instead of completely numb, as all of that stuff left me, I was overwhelmed with a sense of peace and love and joy and purpose. And it was as if in that moment I had felt okay for the first time since I was 12 years old and I tried cocaine. And I'm of the faith, I believe that God will us like that. No more cravings, heal cancer, heal mental illness, all this. That didn't happen for me. And what I learned over the next 3 weeks, while I was waking up and I was shaking in withdrawals and I was craving and I couldn't go through the day without needing something inside of me, is that even when we find God, we have work to do. So what I did was the 12 steps. I found a sponsor that would actually sit down with me, and he came and picked me up from a sober living house every morning at 6:30 a.m. That he managed into the basement. We read the big book and we did what it said. And the only time I would get relief from that shaking, irritable, discontent, craving, withdrawal, everything, the only time I would get relief from that was when I was actually sitting across the table from him, or I was sitting down and I was working on my. So all I did until I was done was the step work because it was the only relief I would get. I finished my 4th step, and on day 25, I did my first ever 5th step. To confess all your stuff, and you find your resentments and your fears and go through your sex conduct, and you find all your, and you admit you've never admitted to anybody. And my sponsor came and picked me up. We went up to the Rims in Billings, Montana, and did everything to him, and nothing more. I'm like, all right, well, I'm glad I got that over with. Next morning, he comes and picks me up, 6:30 a.m. in his 1983 Mailman Jeep, and driving to the movie theater. I'm looking over at this beautiful sunrise. And for the first time since I was 12 years old, I had absolutely no desire to drink or use. It was as if the day before, all I could think about was cravings, withdrawal. When am I going to use? What am I going to use? How am I going to get it? this time, my mind isn't even going there. I don't want it. It was a spiritual awakening that came 3 weeks after meeting Jesus face to face at IHOP that still took work for me to achieve. I finished the 12 steps as if my life depends on it on day 30, December 6th. I stopped smoking cigarettes, haven't had a drag of a cigarette since. This whole time I'm journaling, and I had this journal prompt. Every morning I would write 3 things I'm grateful for, 3 amazing things that could happen today, and then a prayer to God. Dear God, thank you so much for this. And I still have, you see all these are full of these prompts. And I still have the journal from day 30 where it would be amazing if I didn't smoke a cigarette today and I could show everyone that you can quit everything at once. And it's amazing looking back, and sometimes I even miss that fire that happens in early recovery. I don't ever want to go through addiction again, but that fire that happens in early recovery, if you catch it, can take you places faster than anything else can. And on day 37, a week after I quit smoking cigarettes, I hopped on a treadmill, ran a mile in 7 minutes and 18 seconds. And the way I did it, I was looking at a mirror and I was just what else can you do, God? Just running. And then what I found out during COVID, I ran a mile in under 6 minutes because I got this mentality that I personally wanted to continue to improve, because the better I am, the better I'm going to be able to show up for the people out there suffering. I was at a place where I didn't believe I was going to ever stop using drugs. I thought I was going to die an addict. And as soon as I found that freedom that I didn't think existed for me, I knew that it was my life's purpose to help as many people find that freedom as possible. And that's what I've been doing my whole recovery. I've never done 12-step work. I've sponsored dozens of men and half a dozen women through the work. I've sat down with a woman in another country struggling. There were no female sponsors down there, nobody that spoke English. She's sitting there suffering. What is she supposed to do? We sat down at a coffee shop 3 days in a row, all day from open to close, read the big book, did what it said. She's crying. She meets God for the first time. She's still sober. It works. And what I found is that it was never even, and I love all our fellowships. I love every fellowship. I love all my recovery. What I found is that meetings were never meant to keep people like me sober. They were meant for people like me to go find other people that need people like me to help them get sober. That's what they're there for. It's not group therapy. I'm supposed to go in there and tell you about my wife leaving and my truck dying and my dog is getting old and all that kind of stuff, and job is this and that. It's about the solution, because someone like me going in there for 8 years and not knowing that you're supposed to sit down every day with the sponsor and do the work, not knowing that that's the solution that started almost 90 years ago that still works today. And you will not find somebody that believes in Jesus more than I do. And when I'm doing the 12-step work, I do it exactly as outlined in the big book and let them find exactly who God is to them. Because I have not sponsored one person that went through the 5th step, at least the 5th step, not one, that didn't meet God right in front of me for them. I remember sponsoring an atheist one time. We're sitting at a coffee shop, we're reading We Agnostics, and he's militantly against God. This is that, and this is that. And I remember he's like, I'm reading it to him, and he goes to point at a page to say something about God, and he stops right in the middle, and he looks up at me, says, bro, I feel him. And he sits back. I feel him. That's the kind of stuff that happens, but only somebody in recovery can help someone suffering have that experience to save their life. I work in treatment. My first treatment center opened up in March. Our outpatient is open and we're going to have 68 beds in October, detox and inpatient. I believe in treatment, but there is nothing that works like someone like me, someone who has been through it, helping someone that's going through it. Doesn't exist. My 2 years clean and sober on November 2019, I published my book, From Chains to Saved. That became a bestseller, and I started getting messages and emails from all over the world, literally Sweden and the UK and all over the United States, of people my story was helping. I mean, I don't even have that special of a story. I just have practiced telling it, which I think everybody in recovery should be doing, because that's your superpower to help the people out there suffering. So after my book goes crazy, I start coaching and training other people in recovery to write and publish books. You can see some of them right up here. And I start noticing that each of us has such a unique and special story, and a unique and special difference about us that makes us equipped to help people that some of us other ones can't. I can't connect with the girl that went through childhood sexual trauma. I didn't go through that kind of stuff. But when they hear Crystal on a podcast, who decided to share her story in a book and on podcasts, when they hear her story, they think, wow, I'm not alone. And they reach out to her for help. Our superpower in recovery is our story. That shameful moment, the thing that kept me dark and hidden for 10 years, Chuck's suicide, was my opening for this podcast. It's my superpower. The thing that I'm so ashamed of, the thing that I think has the greatest power to take me out, ends up being my superpower to help others. And everyone listening to this right now, there is something inside of you. There is someone out there suffering right now that will find until they meet you. Every single one of you listening to this. And that's what my belief is with Recovered on Purpose. We've been able to grow a social media following. And it's so funny, because when I was suffering so hard, I reached out to these big pages and they messaged me back, and I was just so amazed that this person like saw me, right? And now I get it, because people reach out to me every day, and I'm still just Adam, the exact same guy that was homeless and a drug addict that cannot get enough of our community. I love addicts. I love alcoholics. I've been able to make a ton of money in recovery, go skydiving in 3 countries. I've done a TED Talk. I've opened a treatment center. I've, done a lot of really cool stuff in recovery. And I would give it all back if it meant I couldn't sponsor addicts and alcoholics. There is nothing more fulfilling than sitting across the table with someone suffering like you suffered and watching their eyes light up, watching their life change in front of you. I'm getting chills right now. So anyone out there that's listening to this, if you take anything from this podcast, from my story, I hope you take that your story matters. And there's someone out there that needs it. And if you're in recovery and you're a year, 2, 3 years in, and you don't have at least a couple knuckleheads around you that you're sponsoring for free and for fun, get to work. There's more out there suffering. There's more of us out there in addiction than there are of us in recovery. So each of us, it's not about if you can help one. It's not about that. It's about how many can you help. One is amazing, over and over and over again. If you guys want to find me, recoveredonpurpose.org, I have free 4th-step worksheets, because again, I still love helping people get through the work. I have 8-step worksheets, relapse prevention worksheets. Everything's free. I post content every Friday with a video, plus blog, just so that you can, talk about all kinds of stuff. I've done every one of the 12 steps and traditions, and talk about rewiring our brains, and, check out the blog. And then Radix Recovery, RADIX recovery.com. That's the treatment center. And hoping that here pretty soon, I'm going to be able to start helping a lot of people with that center. A lot of people. Love you all very much. And thank you so much for having me.